pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We're a little bit late because of discussion in closed session. Like to get an update. This is a presentation from the Soquel Unified School Elementary District regarding bond funding projects.
No, that's very old.
Oh, I didn't think that was on the agenda, but you gave it to me. Okay, so, yeah. Okay, I'm just going to go to what I have. The rest is correct, okay. Basically, we have a presentation from Red Cross and a certificate. So we have from Red Cross? Okay. I'm going to read this to you because I can't stand up and read it myself. So this is a proclamation designating March 2019 as the American Red Cross Month. So the presentation reads, whereas the American Red Cross is one of the largest humanitarian organizations in the world and every day delivers its mission to prevent and alleviate human suffering in the face of emergencies. And whereas every year the Red Cross responds to an average of more than 62,000 disasters across this country, from small home fires to devastating massive disasters. Last year alone, large crises included mudslides in California, a volcano in Hawaii, wildfires in Colorado and California, destructive hurricanes in Florida and the Carolinas, and devastating typhoon in U.S. territories. And whereas the Central Coast chapter here in Capitola and Santa Cruz assisted with 66 local disasters alone in the past year alone, and helped save lives through its home fire campaign. Since the campaign launched in October 2014, the Central Coast chapter has worked with community partners to install 1,795 smoke alarms and make 582 households safer. And whereas in our area last year, the Red Cross handled 141 emergency military calls and collected 6,357 units of blood from our generous blood donors. And whereas the citizens of Capitola are among those volunteering and donating to assist their neighbors when they need a helping hand. And whereas the Red Cross shelters, feeds, and provides emotional support to victims of disasters, supplies about 40% of the nation's blood supply, teaches skills that save lives, and provides international humanitarian aid, and supports military members and their families. And whereas each year we dedicate the month of March to recognize and thank the Red Cross volunteers and donors who give of their time and resources to help members of the community. The Red Cross depends on these local heroes to deliver help and hope. So, now I thereby resolve that as the mayor of Capitola, I proclaim March 2019 as American Red Cross Month.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yeah.
Mayor and members of the City Council, we want to thank the City of Capitola for honoring the Red Cross during Red Cross Month, and thank the citizens of Capitola for their generous contributions of blood and life-saving services to our community. We're grateful and appreciative of your recognition, and we hope that we can continue to serve our community and be good stewards for each and every one of the citizens in Capitola. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have,
That's the proclamation there.
where is the thing? Oh, there it is. Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh, absolutely. Take one picture.
You're welcome. Cheese. I like your hat. Thank you. I like my hat.
did try to find a red shirt for the occasion. Yeah, okay. So, we now have a historic museum update. And Frank? Oh, no, not Frank in this case. Yes, Devin.
Not up front, no,
Yes.
but here. Well, good evening to you all. Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is Dave Payton, a member of the Board of Trustees. Let me first, before I begin, introduce our president, Niels Kiesling, is here tonight. Our secretary, Pam Greninger, is here, and our youth representative, Joshua Henshaw, is here as well. Hey, Josh. And, of course, last but not least in this case is Frank. Frank will be helping me. Frank Perry will be helping with the slides tonight. So, anyway, on behalf of the Museum Board of Trustees, thank you for this opportunity to present this update on the Capitola Historical Museum and the exciting progress that has been made over the past few years. The museum's exhibition for 2019 is titled Capitola Obscura, Little Known Facts About Capitola History. Did you know that a locomotive that once pulled trains through Capitola is now on permanent display at the Smithsonian? Or that this area was once planted in sugar beets to supply a sugar factory that was located where Nob Hill Foods is today? Well, curator Frank Perry spent 2 months researching, designing, and installing displays on these and 18 other topics. The opening reception will be this Saturday, March 16th, noon to 2, and refreshments will be served. We hope all of you here tonight and those watching on TV back home will be able to attend. Last year's exhibition, Frequently Asked Questions About Capitola, was one of the best attended in the past dozen years. 8,452 people came through the museum, not including the thousands more who enjoyed the outdoor display of the historic 1907 cottage. While many visitors were locals, the majority were from out of town, a few from as far away as the eastern United States, Europe, Asia, and Latin America. Last year's volunteer recruitment doubled the number of volunteers to 80, and I think we have a volunteer here tonight. We have a couple of volunteers here tonight. In 2018, these people generously donated a combined total of 726 hours to staff the front desk during open hours. Each volunteer is essentially an ambassador for Capitola, providing information not only about the town's history, but also about points of interest in the village, frequently giving out maps and guides. Historic photographs from the museum's collection are now on display at local businesses, such as Capitola Self Storage, Eric's Deli, Village House Pizza, and the Capitola Hotel. We are especially looking forward to also having displays at the new library. The museum's focal point feature in the Santa Cruz Sentinel each Sunday also showcases the museum's photographs as well as those of others. The museum continues to add video oral histories to its YouTube channel, and as of last Saturday, these had nearly 2,000 views. The satellite exhibits, the focal point, and the videos take the museum far beyond the building's walls and encourage more people to visit Capitola and the museum. Last year, museum curator Frank Perry responded to over 100 requests for information. Often, people wanted to know about the history of their houses and if the museum, most importantly, had a historic picture of it, and I can vouch for that. We get asked that all the time. Others are researching family history or wanted to know more about resources for history in this area. Last year, the museum released 2 new publications, a companion to Capitola and the Capitola History Coloring Book. There are now 4 general history books on Capitola currently in print, each with a different approach to the topic. Later this year, a bilingual version of the coloring book will also be available. The museum's collection is sort of like an iceberg. Only a small part of it is seen at any one time due to limited space. That is why we change exhibitions each year. Cycling artifacts and photographs through the exhibitions enables us to display much more than would otherwise be possible. Over the past few years, great progress has been made in curating collections that are in storage. Proper archival boxes have been purchased for storing the rarer items. Artifacts have been organized by subject, and inventories have been made of each of the boxes. Besides the Capitola Obscura reception this Saturday at noon, we have 2 other important events coming up. On Tuesday, March 19th, the museum will be holding a fundraiser at Shadowbrook Restaurant. If you dine at the restaurant that evening and tell them that you are dining for the Capitola Museum, they will donate 30% to the museum. This is a fun and easy way to help the museum and enjoy a great dinner too. And last but not least, on Saturday, May 19th, the museum will be hosting the Santa Cruz County History Fair at the Capitola Community Center in Jade Street Park. 25 museums, historical societies, and history-related groups from around the county will have displays of photographs and artifacts celebrating our region's past. Anyone interested in local history won't want to miss this fun and educational event. And that concludes our presentation.
Thank you. That's great. Frank, are you going to want to say a few words? I think he did too.
Frank wrote this, so he's really said it all.
Well, I would like to add that when the History Museum and the group gets together for a party, it's been quite fun. So I think some of these events will be also in the same vein. So any other questions of, no, Sam?
If you just make, I want to say thank you. Frank, Dave, Niels, Josh, Pam, and all the volunteers that really keep Capitola history alive. And I think it's so important what you do in that regard. And I would encourage all the residents to come to the opening this Saturday at 12 o'clock. And if you can't make it there, be sure to stop in and see the exhibits. It is just wonderful. So I just wanted to personally express my gratitude and thank you for all the work that you do.
Okay. So I have a project for you, Frank, later, but I can't talk about it now because it's not scheduled. So we've received the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So let's get a report on closed session.
The council met per the special or closed session agenda, but no reportable action was taken this evening.
Okay. Any additional materials?
There were none received for this agenda.
Okay. So I'd like to say at this point that Tristan Rivera is going to be our technician tonight, and the meeting is cablecast live on Charter Communications Cable TV Channel 8, and is also being recorded to be rebroadcast on the following Wednesday at 8 a.m. on Saturday, the first rebroadcast also at 1 p.m. on Charter Channel 71 and Comcast Channel 25. It's also available on our website. So with that, no additional, this is the time for public comments. Anyone in the audience would like to make a public comment, please come to the lectern.
Mayor, Councilman, Gary Richard Arnold. The person following me's name is Victorious Alexander, and he created a crime by participating in a government forum. He brought one of the props he bought from a Target department store to make his point, and they used restraining orders in order to keep him away from that judicial jurisdiction. The censorship is legend, especially in Santa Cruz County. We've had both John Leopold and Zach Friend threaten the Grange. They threatened lives and they threatened property enough to have them shut down 2 different speakers. We've got a problem with community TV that shut off the public's presentation last month within 18 days, both in San Benito County and in Santa Cruz County. The chairman of the board of community TV, his name is Maitreya, I'm sorry. And that's it's a favorite cult name, and it's very anti-Christian. It says on his personal biography, his closest friend is Eric Schmidt. And of course, Eric Schmidt, we know, is compared to Beria, the NKVD, because of his censorship he's been doing throughout the country. They also use the Southern Poverty Law Center as to who is telling fake news and who isn't. The founder of the Southern Poverty Law Center was Julian Bond. He, together with James Weinstein used to drive around Julia's and Ethel Rosenberg atomic spies that were finally executed. But he ran an organization called In These Times out of Chicago. The direct son of In These Times is Good Times, and right out of Santa Cruz. And in San Luis Obispo, it's in other times. But these are decidedly deliberate in order to control the community. And the anti-Christian stance also, you can see with Angela Davis, the person that she ran with, which was Gus Hall. He said, "I dream of the hour when the last congressman is strangled to death on the guts of the last preacher. And since Christians seem to love singing about the blood, why not give them some?" And of course, she provided the weapons in order to blow a judge's head out and kill a couple of policemen. We have Leon Panetta's campaign manager, Don Lane, giving Angela Davis a key to the city of Santa Cruz only in 2015. This marriage between the Trilateral Commission and the communists continues. The book, California Dynasty of Communism, written by FBI agents, said Alan Cranston was one of the members that was being part of the subversion. Kamala Harris was an intern for Alan Cranston. Dianne Feinstein's Russell Lowe is a communist Chinese spy that spoke at the UCSC within the last couple of weeks.
Thank you very much. Any other members of the audience that would like to speak?
Yeah, before I begin my public comment, I want to be able to share with members of the public what it is to be a good flag-waving Americans, because we are good people. I truly believe that. And I want to be able to affirm our democratic values. You know, I'm in the political arena, not just for the giggles, but I'm there at a necessity. You know, every political system, right, when you're speaking political dissent, are cracking down on people's freedom of speech. At the County Board of Supervisors, they changed their policy, right, with the consent agenda. So I'm here to inform Capitola residents and District 2 members of the anti-dialogical action that's going on at the county level, which I find it very disrespectful, because members of the public should be able to weigh in on the political issue and offer the public-spirited perspective. This is not for the wealthy, the powerful, the influential. This is a community of equals, where I should be able to, as a person of color, right, be proud to be an American and to be able to come in here and to exercise these democratic values. Now, Zach Friend runs his district, and he wants to take the American public like we're just toys, right? Undermining the Brown Act, undermining our political dissent, our right to criticize our government. Hey, I'm enjoying myself. I'm not letting political power go to my head. I'm a character, and I'm always going to be a character. I don't know my place, and it's okay. This is lawful activity. And so I want to be able to galvanize District 2, right? Let them know that all institutions are to be tested by the degree to which they guarantee liberty, right? Who would ever overthrow liberty of a city, county, or nation must begin by subduing freedom of speech, right? The agreements that you guys have with the human society is an agreement, right? And without the consent of the people, you have no political power, right? So Zach Friend and the county board are undermining this democratic value by marginalizing and criminalizing political dissent, which is shameful. They're using all tools whatsoever. I just like to be polemical for the sake of exercising that right. I don't want to be going with embracing the tyranny of the majority. I come here with good intentions to offer the public-spirited perspective of how people of color are experiencing this political system in Santa Cruz County, and I have every right to shame my politicians, to use the unforced force of the Speech Act, and to challenge Zach Friend, District 2 County Board of Supervisors, to come at it right and to be better for all and allow us to all participate, right? You know, these democratic values are important during these trying times, and there's a lot of people that are following my activism, right? I have a right to come into the political arena, to offer my political criticism, the public square, in the cyber world. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others in the audience that would like to speak? Seeing none, bring it back to City Council for staff comments and City Council members. None? You bet?
I do, yeah.
Okay.
So I had the wonderful opportunity to meet with the Santa Cruz County public health educators recently, and after talking with them about the uptick in the use of vaping by our middle schoolers and our high schoolers, I was presented with some really scary numbers and facts. And so I would be interested in having staff explore the policy regulating the sales to minors, and possibly looking at banning the flavored tobacco pods. So if we can look at policies, I know some other cities have adopted similar policies, and we're one of a couple who have not. So I'd be interested in looking at that, if we were in agreement on council with that.
Everyone has an option to put something on the agenda.
Okay, and then may I add one more?
Sure.
And then I'd also like to look at, or like to request that Capitola City Council's compensation be reviewed, possibly by the Finance Committee and staff, if, and you know, not at next meeting, but in the future, if that was a possibility as well.
Elton, okay. Kristen?
Yeah, I just want to say quickly, on Saturday, March 23rd, the Community Action Board is having an event to benefit the Day Worker Center of Santa Cruz County. It's Saturday, March 23rd from 6 to 8:30 at the Peace United Church on High Street in Santa Cruz. Tickets are $35 each, and they're available to purchase either at the Day Worker Center or online. And it's a wonderful organization and a wonderful fundraiser, and I hope everyone will have the opportunity to attend.
Sam?
No comments.
Okay, I have a few. This Friday, I'm going to go to a human traffic workshop all day at Twin Lakes. It starts at 8:30, and I think it's already maxed out as far as attendance. Also, my daughter's invited me at this. As a dad, I'm very happy to go on a hike to the Lost Coast. And so I've asked the city vice chair to cover for me, and she will do that in June the 29th. So I'd just like to announce that, and thank you very much, Kristen. And then also, I recently read, and I don't know if this is possible for the city of Capitola, so I'm addressing this to our city attorney. Some cases, I've been reading the newspaper that certain jurisdictions have actually called for the taking off of the records of those who've been arrested and indicted for marijuana use. And I don't know if we have any say in that, but I'm pretty sure that our police have actually arrested those for possession over the years. And with the way marijuana use and our legalization in California, perhaps across the country, is going, a lot of communities have said that this is a blemish on the record of people. And at this point, society is not looking the same way about that. So I kind of like to get some input on that at a future date, not right now, obviously. And those are my comments. So, staff, any comments? Oh, great.
As Steve's coming up, I just wanted to note that we have a slightly irregular format this evening. We're going to have a regular agenda, and we're going to move through it. And at 8:30, wherever we are in the agenda, we'll be pausing for a moment to consider a special agenda item about the trees on this property, and then we'll continue and wrap up this agenda. So just so everybody's prepared for that format this evening.
Thank you. That will be at 8:30. Steve.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I have two quick project items I'd like to talk about. One is the Jewel Box traffic calming. I'm sure you all got an email from me earlier today. That project is initiated. As of today, we took the pre-counts, and then starting next week, we will be installing the speed tables on Jade Street and 42nd Avenue, and then we should have the signage up the following week. So that project is moving forward quite rapidly and should be completed in the next couple of weeks. Second is on Tuesday, March 26th at 6 p.m. we will be holding a community meeting at the Fairfield Inn and Suites concerning the Bromer Street Improvement Project. This is an improvement project on Bromer that goes from 41st to just past 38th Avenue that will include the construction of new sidewalk on the north side of 38th Avenue, repaving and striping bike lanes in both directions. So that, again, that meeting is on March 26th. 6 p.m. at Fairfield Inn and Suites, right there at the corner of Bromer and 41st, and it will be in meeting room A. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor. if I may. Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Steve?
We have a question, Steve.
Sorry. Just real quick, any future public hearing meetings, can we be emailed about those?
Sure.
Okay,
We mailed a notice out today to all the residents. I'll be happy to send that notice out
Great.
tomorrow to you.
fantastic, thank you.
Maybe to all the city council members.
Yeah.
Okay,
Appreciate
thank you
that.
very
Thank
much. Linda?
No comments?
No comments. Okay, moving along to considering the general plan use element and land use map update.
We have a board appointment.
I'm just going by this darn thing.
Mr. Mayor, before we move forward on item 8A, I need to go ahead and recuse myself from the conversation and vote on this matter because I have a personal relationship with the applicant. So I'm going to step out, and if someone could let me know when this is complete, and I will return.
Okay, I think this is, I'm just going by that, it's out of order, something's wrong here. Okay, boards and commissions. Thank you for recusing yourself. This is to appoint someone to the Hazardous Material Advisory Commission. We have an
Yes.
update? Yes.
This is for a 4-year term. The City of Capitola holds a seat on the Hazardous Materials Advisory Commission. And as the mayor is well aware, as he has been our representative for the last 4 years, that term ends in April. And we have an application from, I'm happy to say, a very qualified applicant, Nick Brown, who is here this evening. He has a degree in emergency planning. He has served as a city intern. He is working on his career in public safety. And he has applied for this position to represent the city for the next 4-year term. And this is an appointment made by the council as a whole, so I would ask for a vote on this item.
Okay. Any comments before from the applicant? No? No, okay. I think we all know you anyway. Okay. So is there a motion?
I'll move to approve Nick Brown.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Thank you, Nick, for applying, and I think we should also thank Linda for thinking of Nick when that came up. I really appreciate that. Okay. Moving on now to general government public hearings. We have the Art and Cultural Commission annual report.
Consent?
Can we get Councilmember Peterson back? She's back.
She's back.
Oh, she's so quick.
She knows.
Snap your fingers. Mr. Mayor, before we dive into that one, should we take the consent item first?
This was all out of order. Okay, yes, we have to look at the city minutes from last time. There's a consent item for city minutes. Anyone in the audience who would like to speak to this? Hearing none. Is there a
Motion to approve consent calendar?
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we've done consent, okay. Now we're on to item 10, general government hearings, Art and Cultural Commission.
Good evening, Mayor Bertrand, council members. I am here as the staff representative for the Art and Cultural Commission to give the annual report, but I would also love to have give Councilmember Story the opportunity to speak as well, because he has been he's currently the council representative, but has been the Planning Commission representative. So if there's any point in the presentation, Councilmember Story, you'd like to speak up, please let me know.
Thank you, Larry.
So just so you know, for the Art and Cultural purpose is to advise the City Council basically on the use of public funds to support and encouragement of the improve new programs of the arts. We'll start out with the highlights of what was happened last year. One of the ongoing things we do is the concerts. The last few years we've increased it to 13, and more and more people attend. I mean, if we could fit more people in there, I think there would be more people. The selection committee is a subcommittee of the Art and Cultural Commission. They meet and listen to, this year it was about 40 different applicants for this and another dozen or so for the other concerts, and they do a very good job of finding not only favorites but finding new bands, trying to get more interest in the concerts, and I think they've been very successful. The bands are paid for by local sponsors. The vast majority of them are Capitola. A lot of them are in the village, but they see the benefit of having 1,000 people on a Wednesday night in the village, and so they've been very, very helpful in keeping this program going. The city then pays for the sound engineers to make it happen. And I think it's a great partnership. Everyone seems to be very happy with the concerts, and we should be announcing very soon the list for 2019. Here's a couple images of last year. We created a thank you poster or a banner that we've had at all the events to thank all of the sponsors, because obviously without them we couldn't do this. Another event, and it's a little less attended, but it's 6 Sundays during the summer. It's a music and art exhibition down at the Esplanade, selling arts and crafts, personal, very small craftspeople come out and sell along the beach, and as part of it, they have a band, and usually that band's a little less energetic than the Twilight concerts, but it's amazing around here. If there's music being played, people are dancing, and so Sunday afternoons, usually I think the bands are from 1 to 3. You'll see people dancing right out there. It doesn't matter, what the music is. So, one change this year. In the past, the Art and Cultural Commission had put on 3 movies, and the Begonia Festival put on the 4th around Labor Day. Last year, with the Begonia Festival no longer being in existence, the Art and Cultural Commission took over that movie as well, and the movie selection committee picked another great set of movies. This is a very different crowd than the Twilight concerts. It is very much a parents and children's crowd. So what we've learned over the past few years, and I'm sure Councilmember Story can talk about this, is that if focusing the movies on the small kids gets a huge turnout. When we get a movie last year, Sing, I believe, it was incredibly crowded for a Friday evening. And another thing is that the Capitola movie theater, Cinelex, provides popcorn. So that's a huge draw as well. So it's a great time, and again, a very different crowd, and it's still bringing people down to the beach in the Capitola Village. Capitola Plein Air. This is a relatively new event. I hope everyone's had a chance to either see the folks painting or coming to the final sale and juried event, but it's getting more and more popular every year. First year, it was a struggle to get people to come out. The sale didn't generate anything. This year, I believe, I should have the full, but it was over $15,000 in paintings sold. In addition to that, the number of paintings that were sold was fantastic. I was there helping out that morning, and there was a line at 11 a.m. when we were waiting to open the place. I was stunned. There was 20 people waiting to get in at 11 a.m. So it's obviously known in the area and known in the painting community. So it's very proud of what the commission has done with this, because it started from nowhere, and it's definitely every year has gotten bigger. And I don't know if we do normally have the winners, but we are currently displaying them at the rec center right now to get more people an opportunity to see, and hopefully get more participants in it moving forward. Opera at the Beach is a unique event. It actually is a professional opera company and a professional orchestra that plays out at our beach. The full 25 people, I believe, in the orchestra, plus a full dressed opera. And it's right in the middle of you get kids walking back and forth, sitting, watching for 10 minutes, especially the kids amazed at the costume changes and everything. And it's another event that every year, we don't track ticket sales because every one of these events is free. So, but I do know, because I've been at every one, the number of people out there every year has increased. There's been buses that have come down for the event from the Bay Area. So, we said I'm not going to say there isn't anywhere else, because there may be, but as far as I know, there's nowhere else you can see an opera looking at the ocean in California. So, very unique, and it's a wonderful event, and it leans more toward the art piece. It's a way to get a different type of art out to the community that we normally wouldn't see. And as you know, we do rotate the artwork in the City Hall. Roy Segura over at New Brighton continues to bring his students' artwork into the back, and it always gets a great response. So I need to find out when the next group of works is there so we can acknowledge it. But he tends to show up and put them up, and very little work on our side now. It used to be a much more difficult process getting artwork in here, but he takes care of it all. As you can see, we do have the most recent group, but he usually changes it 2 or 3 times a school year. And 3 big art projects this year. It had been a couple years since we were able to get anything done. I think at last year's we were talking about the council had approved it and things were in process. The first one was the railing along Capitola Avenue. This is a great project because it accomplished 2 things. We were able to get first of all, a beautiful railing. Something in comparison, we had just a galvanized steel guardrail. We were able to extend it out to help meet ADA compliance along that ramp. So it serves 2 functions, and I think it's fantastic. I think it's I was reading a post by someone with our social media, is that if you go out there when the sun is in the right way, you see that reflection on the sidewalk. And they wanted to get together someone out there to color it in, like go out there with chalk and color the reflection of that in. I'm like, that'd be something really interesting to see, because it's such a fantastic reflection. So I hope everyone's using it and enjoying it. The sea lions, I'm sure if you've been down there, you can see there's always someone there. Kids are touching it. It's hard to tell, but you can see they're getting use. The noses and everything are becoming a little shinier. I've sent pictures to the artist, and she said that's exactly what was going to happen. You can tell kids are climbing on that all the time. So I think it's a very successful. We're still hopefully in the next month or so we'll get an ID, naming it. We're having trouble figuring out how to get that in, but I think we found somebody to put in there, so that way we can put the name and give credit to the artist. I don't know if anyone skateboards, but at McGregor Park, Taylor Reinhold and Jimbo Phillips have almost completely finished the sculpture. Unfortunately, the artist had some injury issues, I think skateboarding, so he postponed it. I think it's right that they are going to be out at the skateboard event, correct? They're going to be at the skateboard event for a dedication. We'll get that out. So they've got a couple touch-ups to do, but I will say one thing: you go out there, it hasn't been touched. There is no, it is, and it's absolutely. If you look at it from the highway, it's fantastic. It really has added a lot, and it is what the commission wanted with this is something that not only was beautiful, but it included skateboard culture, and I think it's met it 100%. Having these 2 names on it really, I think it, the credibility was there right away. So, and it's really wonderful. Some of the plans for next year, obviously, we're going to continue with the concerts and the movies. A lot of that work is done by our art and cultural representative or staff person, Kelly Barretto, and she's already working on it. But she does want to know if anyone knows sponsors, she's willing to talk to them. There's always a lot of interest, but that's where she's working now. The letters will go out to those who haven't already committed, because a lot of sponsors want their date, their band, and everything. So those folks that have been ongoing sponsors will get first dibs. But every year there are new sponsors, so it's great. Looking at more, the commission's looking at more opportunities for art events, such as plein air and opera. Not sure what exactly they are, but I do know they're looking at things, possibly using the New Brighton Gym for possibly larger music type events. That'll be something they're looking at. Always a big thing, and especially this year, we're looking at some new opportunities for public art, which include the public art commemorating the Begonia Festival. I don't know if you remember, the Begonia Festival has offered to go 50% on a sculpture or art remembering it. So a subcommittee is working on that, trying to determine the type of art and the location at this point. And the other very exciting thing for the commission is that they're looking forward to working with the new library on a public art project. So that's also on there. So that is the end of my report. Any questions at this time?
And I see someone, oh, you do have a
Yeah,
question?
I think Sam does.
Okay, you have a question?
Oh,
Okay.
not a question. Maybe go with questions from other council members, but there are just a few things I wanted to add
Okay.
into the report.
Please.
You want me to go ahead
Yeah,
and do that
please.
now?
Yeah, and then I do that.
Thank you. Thank you, Larry, for that presentation and informing the community about what the Arts Commission does. I'd say it's one of the most fulfilling, aside from this position, of course, but one of the most fulfilling and fun things that I do is participating on the Arts Commission. I wanted to clarify for the library project this year, the particular project that's going to be coming forth is to propose a trellis over one of the decks, and that the Arts Commission is going to be involved in the design and the implementation of that particular project. But I principally wanted to acknowledge the community volunteers that participate in the Arts Commission. You know, we just, when Mike Termini left the council, he left the commission, and he had been played a very important role on the Arts Commission, and I just want to acknowledge and thank his contributions to the arts in our community. As well, we lost two other commissioners, Rick Gross recently and Mary Jo Connolly, and so I wanted to extend our gratitude to them for their involvement over the last couple of years. And I want to thank the current arts commissioners. We have a new president. His name is Roy Johnson, who is an artist. We have Susan Peak, Lori Hill, Mary Beth Kalin, James Wallace, and Courtney Christensen. And I do want to kind of put out a pitch. We have two seats open. We have an artist seat and an at-large seat. And so if there's anyone in the community, if you really want to be involved in selecting ideas for the Arts Commission and participating in that process, you know, we go from, you know, the concept and looking at the designs, making the call for artists, jurying the submissions, and actually then even following it through to completion. And there's a lot of, I think, satisfaction in seeing the art that we have in the community. Sometimes a lot of controversy because they're always very visible, and we all have our own opinions about, you know, what's good art and what's not good art. But I consider that part of the, I think, vibrancy of participating in the Arts Commission. So I did want to make a call for that, and I would encourage any community members, if you see a place or have ideas about how we can improve art in public places here in Capitola, please, you know, contact the Arts Commission and bring us your ideas. But we look forward in this next year to many of the projects that Larry just announced, and then I will stop. And so if you have any questions, thank you.
Okay, I think Yvette has some questions.
Yeah.
I'll go after that. I have a question.
Well, thank you, Councilman Story. I absolutely love what the commission does. I benefit from all of the annual events, and so does my 4-year-old. So I really, really love everything that goes on. And I really appreciate seeing the timeline for 2020 and the focus on 41st Avenue and projects taking place there. When I was reviewing the goals, the only thing that kind of stood out to me was the possibility of the removal of the trees and planters in Esplanade Park. And so my only suggestion would be, since I don't sit on the commission, would be that a plan be brought forward to us before that actually happens, because again, like I said, my little one, and I know a lot of other little ones, really love those trees and really what is over there.
Yeah, and just to respond to that particular project actually was discussed and approved at the commission before I had started on it. But just to clarify, all the concepts come to the council before they get implemented. So there will be an opportunity, you will be able to weigh in on particular projects that the Arts Commission proposes in the community.
Fantastic, thank you.
Ed?
A quick question. A couple months ago, the Art Commission came to us with some placement of some spheres. Did they ever figure out where those spheres are going to wind up?
Yeah, you know, we have not. We kind of tabled that particular item because there was a need to, and I think what the council had proposed, look for a different location to place them. So that's still being studied. One of the things that's on the commission's project plan list is to really get an inventory of the places in the community where it may be appropriate to put public art. And we will be looking at and coming back and looking at the idea about those spheres, globes, sea globes. And, you know, there's possibilities of, you know, maybe when the new jetty is rebuilt, maybe that would be a possible location, or when the wharf is rebuilt, whether it would be suitable to put there. So I'd just say that that's still a work in progress.
Okay,
Thank
you for that update.
Yes, Yvette?
And if I may birdwalk on that a little bit, I would be interested in keeping an eye on the sea lion sculpture, just because summer is approaching, warm weather, and just I had some concerns about that getting really hot, and I understand that those spheres were going to be made of the same material, so just something to kind of keep an eye on. I would appreciate that for the
Yeah,
little
no,
ones
thank you.
especially.
And that did kind of come up at our last meeting, the discussion about whether they may get too hot, you know, in the summertime. So we will be keeping an eye on that.
Yeah, actually, I do have a quick comment. I may be incorrect, but I want to say that I remember the discussion of the trees and the Esplanade Park remodel happening last year. So is there an opportunity to get an update on that? Because I want to say that we had already chosen new trees and plans for shade and a whole new remodel, correct?
So I think what it is, Councilmember Peterson, we came up with a conceptual plan.
Yeah.
And phase one was actually the sea lion sculpture.
Okay.
And then we would, after we got through phase one, we'd look at phase two, and there were some, and it was mainly focused on the artistic elements, which included, you know, another sort of shade. The idea was that you would, with that center row of trees, you'd open it up so it could be more of a continuous, I guess, area for people to watch the shows. And then the other piece of it, I'm sorry, I don't remember if which was phase one or phase two and phase three, was doing something with the showers, making that an artistic
Shower wall.
Yeah.
Yes, a shower wall of some sort. And like I said, the sea line was phase one, and I think it's time that we're probably going to be bringing back in the next meeting or two with the commission to start looking at see what they want to do with phase two and phase three. And we'll probably revisit the whole thing because it has been a little while at this point.
Okay. So we just approved the concept and not the, okay, perfect, thank you.
Okay, yeah, I think it is time to revisit this. I had some concerns about tree removal myself. Also, I'm going to bring this up a little bit later when we talk about the public capital projects, but I do have concern that the mural is largely obscured by portable potties, and so I'd like to have a project where the city actually figures out a way to completely reveal the murals rather than having porta potties in front of it. Those are my comments. So at this point, are there any comments from the members of the public? Okay, so bringing back to council, I think it's a report to receive, and that's it. Okay, thank you very much, Larry. So on to item B, general plan, land use element, and land use map update. Request a report from Director Hurley.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Okay, before you tonight, I have the general plan cleanup. This is a repeat item for a few of you. Previous Community Development Director Gruno had brought this to you in 2018 at the initiation of this process. What we are doing is in 2014, the general plan was adopted, and then following the general plan adoption, we started working on the zoning code update. Throughout that process, we noticed that there were inconsistencies between the general plan that was adopted and the direction we were getting with the zoning code. So this is really to clean up any inconsistencies, reflect on the current conditions, and then to add clarity to several items. So there's 8 items to discuss tonight, and then there were a lot of mapping changes. I have a slide on each mapping change. I'm not going to go through them slide by slide, but if you have any questions on any of the mapping changes, I'm happy to bring those up. So when Planning Commission and City Council reviewed this back in February and March of 2018, the requests were to proceed with the proposed general plan amendments, to clarify that additional floor area in the village would only apply to the former Capitola Theater site, and to extend the public review period to 60 days. And there was also a request to change the name of the residential single-family designation to R1 to be consistent with the zoning code, the land use map within the land use map, and for residential multifamily to be RM to be consistent with zoning. So the mapping changes, I will move forward with this change after this evening, because I didn't want to make further updates to that map until I had all edits. So that will be input. So the changes that have taken place, we've revised table LU1 to add the Rispin Mansion Park and to delete planned before for the now completed McGregor Park. We also revised figure LU3 to add the Rispin Park site. So, and in this image, we will be modifying the map to show the correct parcel for the McGregor Park. Right now it's too large. It's actually a smaller square over New Brighton. The next change was was addressing how we should calculate residential development intensity within the commercial and mixed use areas. It can either be done through floor area limitations, in which you look at floor area, height, setbacks, open space, and parking, or through density limits, which is units per acre with the same development standards as the FAR. Our previous general plan always used floor area and development standards within the commercial and mixed use designations, and our previous zoning code always used floor area and development standards. The current general plan is unclear. So what we'd like to do within this edit is to clarify how it will be treated. I do want to point out that under the new zoning code, the first draft of the zoning code that went out, it did include a density limit, and it carried through until adoption, of 20 units per acre within the commercial zones and the mixed use zones. This was done in error. I think in the transposing of the old code to the new, it was added there. I went back to the original Planning Commission and City Council minutes, and nowhere did I see direction that staff should have added that. So I think it was something that was transposed at the very beginning of the 3-year process and was not caught, unfortunately. So I'll take that as my mistake, but moving forward, tonight we're asking if you'd like to have the current general plan reflect the way it's always been done with floor area ratio and development standards, and with that, to modify the new zoning code. And the Planning Commission supported that direction when we took it to Planning Commission. And here's the red line change, just explaining that it would be residential uses and commercial and mixed use designations shall be subject to floor area ratio limitations and not dwelling units per acre or density. Next, during a recent...
Excuse me, question.
Are we going to deal with these one by one, or are we going to deal with all as, your hope that we deal with these all as one?
If you'd like, I can stop after the slides, or we can come back to them.
I don't know what the rule.
Get an overview.
You said? 8?
There's 8,
Yeah, just get an overview and then come back? Sam?
Yeah, that's exactly what I would suggest. You know, maybe we could just have the overview summaries, so we viewing all the items. But I think in discussing and approving, that we do each one separately.
Okay, each one separately.
Okay.
And come back. Thank you.
Okay. The next one was the outcome of a density bonus application that came to the city under the state density bonus law. The applicants allowed to use the higher density listed in either your zoning code or your general plan, and our general plan was not as specific as our zoning code, so we brought back the specificity so that the two match now. So if ever a density bonus application were to come in, both the zoning code and the general plan would be in sync. Visitor accommodations, this is also just to sync it with what we did within the zoning code. So to remove the visitor accommodation land use designation as a kind of a base land use designation and introduce the visitor serving overlay. So simple cleanup. Next, the changes to, under the general plan, a lot of work was done initially through the public process of getting feedback on future development of the theater site. And I think there was one general plan meeting that was involved a lot of the public that was just about the theater site and future development there. Within policy LU 7 or within the goal LU 7, this is where this was addressed. And during the initial review by Planning Commission, they had asked that we add specificity under LU 7.3, where the action item is to allow additional floor area ratio for the for a future hotel in the village. And the Planning Commission originally had asked that it be specific to the future Capitola Theater site. The new Planning Commission, during their recent review in February, they requested, when they made their motion for this to move forward, they said, let's move forward with all the changes proposed except for the red lines included here. And the idea there was to keep it more broad and allow other properties to come in, possibly under the for the FAR of 3. I always want to support my Planning Commission, but I do have concerns with the direction, with the amount of public process that went into the original concept in the general plan. So if we were to move forward and start thinking about allowing this FAR of 3 to be on other sites, I think it does warrant a public process and more thought. The other thing is the FAR of 3 for this site was very specific to this site of allowing more density where there's a bluff behind it, and additional development can be taken in on that site because of that bluff behind it, and there's not another building behind it in which a view would be taken. So, and it was very clear in the development standards that the views from above should be protected, and very specific to that site. And also the way in which in the layout of this section of the general plan, it's within 2 pages, and it's very clear that there was a map identifying the village theater site on the same page as the standards for the future hotel. So I think the intent was there, and the cleanup would help as staff, as questions come in, to say that it's specific to that site, to have the red line in. And I also wanted to point out that within the new zoning code, we also added specificity for the theater site. So within the eligibility under the incentives for community benefits in the new zoning code, it says a hotel on the former Capitola Theater site, and that has APNs listed in the mixed-use village zoning. So that's the site that's eligible for additional incentives. So by putting it in the general plan, we're creating consistency. The next item is also for consistency. It's on 41st Avenue, talking about the increased floor area. This is another one where within the zoning code, we got more specific about where increased density is allowed along 41st Avenue, and we made it more specific to include the mall property and explain that it's the mall property bound by 41st Avenue, Capitola Road, and Clare Street, so another adding more detail. And then the last item is the land use map. So the land use map, we found a lot of inconsistencies that I have slides on each item if you had any questions on that attachment, but I'm not going to go through each change with you. There were quite a few. So with that, that concludes my presentation. This evening, we're recommending adoption of the addendum to the general plan update environmental impact report and approval of a resolution adopting amendments to the City of Capitola general plan land use element and the general plan land use map.
Okay. As Ed suggested, let's go through each item, and if we have questions, then we'll ask those questions at that point, and then make a motion for each particular item and either approve it or not.
Any questions relating the park information?
Yeah, two questions there. In terms of the library, we have a children's area there. How is that dealt with in terms of the city as a park? Is it considered part of the library? Is it, I mean, we developed that separately, so I'm just a question about that.
It's a public facility, is how it's designated.
Okay. And I'd like to include a proposed park in that list. Is that possible at this point?
If we've missed, have we missed a park?
No,
in the
no,
list?
it's a totally new park. Is this the time to do that, or should I wait for something like this, city manager?
General plan amendment.
I'm not entirely clear. Maybe you could help us understand a little bit more about what you're thinking. And
For about 2 years, been working on trying to develop something at McCormick Triangle in that area and actually get that to become a park. So I'm just trying to move that forward, and is this a time to put that on the list for proposed parks?
my recommendation would be let's identify that as a specific project, and we can develop it through the council. I think listing it in the general plan at this stage.
Okay, thank you.
Premature.
Any other questions on the park list?
I'm going to make a motion or suggest to approve the park cleanup information.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Let's move on.
Okay, the next was how to calculate future development for residential within commercial and mixed-use zones.
Any questions?
No, this is the one where the planning commission recommended going back to the FAR, not the density limit. Yeah, I'm with
Exactly.
moving the arrow to the left, so I'm going to recommend planning commission's recommendation motion for that.
Second. Second by Kristen. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Let's move on.
Okay, multifamily residential, this is just syncing up the dwelling units per acre with the zoning code.
Any questions? Is there a motion?
Motion to sync density.
Yeah, I'll move.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Let's move on.
Next is to remove visitor accommodations, knowing that we now have a visitor overlay.
Okay, any questions? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve visitor accommodations.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next point.
Next is the former Capitola Theater site. The Planning Commission recommendation was not to accept the red lines, specifying the former Capitola Theater site within the FAR.
I'm having a discussion on this.
Yes.
I love my planning commission and my planning commissioners, but I think this was a mistake, unfortunately. I think we've discussed this topic much detail, and the exceptions and allowances that we granted were, in my opinion, specifically for the hotel site. So I'm going to make a motion that I think I want to leave. My motion would be to leave the red lines in then. That's my motion.
I'm going to second that motion. I was involved in the general plan, and I think, Ed, you were there too, and I specifically recall that was specifically for that particular site because of the uniqueness of it. And I think there would just be, as much as I appreciate the Planning Commission's effort, it would just be too much of a general plan amendment, and I'm just leery of the potential impacts of granting that extension to any other potential hotel project. So that's why I'm seconding the motion, and will support it.
Okay, second receipt, I'd like to make a comment. I was also at the general plan, and that was a 2-day workshop. There was a lot of public discussion about everything to deal with the proposed hotel, and I think there was a lot of solidification around this particular issue. So all those in favor?
Aye.
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 I'm sorry.
I thought they might have wanted to comment.
I'm sorry.
No comment.
Okay, okay, I'm just going, okay. Next item, please. My apologies. Okay, next item, please.
41st Avenue, description of where the incentivized area along 41st Avenue.
And I believe, I'm reading this as okay to allow the increased FAR inside the mall property.
That's correct.
Yeah, I'm going to make a motion to support that inclusion.
I'll second.
Okay, Kristen, okay, there's a motion and a second. Any questions? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next item, please.
And changes to the general plan land use map, understanding that there will be a change to the single-family residential, noting that it's R1 and multifamily residential as RM.
Motion to upgrade the map.
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
And I think your presentation was very good, got to all the issues and helped us along. Thank you very much. I reviewed all those map changes. Do the commissioners want to, do council members want to review all the map changes? No questions? Okay, I think we just did that.
Thank you for not opening up the
Yeah.
bee's nest.
Yeah, really.
I do need the actual votes to approve the EIR and to approve the resolution.
That's the last one.
Back to the first one.
Okay.
Motion to approve the EIR and the resolution.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. I think that's it. Thank you very much. Okay, moving along. Probably have more discussion about this. Moving along to item C, consider fiscal year 2019-2020 budget principles and goals.
Mr. Mayor, member of the council, so this is a presentation and a process that we go through each and every year, kind of to kick off our budget cycle. And the intent of our budget, which you've heard me say many times, is really develop a sort of blueprint plan for the city, develop kind of where our priorities are, where we put our resources, and what are going to be our projects for the upcoming fiscal year. And it establishes the framework that staff uses to implement the council's priorities. One of the key steps here is having the council identify what they would like to see as the high-level priorities for the development of the budget. That staff then will develop a draft budget and then bring it through the public process for review. In addition, the other advantage to doing this early is it helps articulate what the council's priorities are, both the staff as well as to the community as a whole. So these principles, I think, as I mentioned, they provide kind of that overarching guide to the budget and ensuring that the budget is consistent with where the council sees the city going. One of the things I would like to try to do this year is to focus a little bit more on kind of the key projects. In the past, we haven't used this opportunity maybe to have the council adopt key projects, which I think can be helpful to have the council identify what the really critical things are to work on in the next coming years, whether they're big infrastructure projects or they're more process or planning oriented. It definitely helps give staff, I think, some guidance, and it can help with future prioritization as issues develop down the road. Our budget principles have evolved over time. I think this was early in my tenure as city manager. We really identified the high-level principles, and then we identified specific goals for the fiscal year, and then identified where in the budget and the metrics that were going to be used to measure achieving those goals. They evolved over time, sometimes getting maybe a little bit simpler. That sort of uber management focus maybe gave way to more sort of a pragmatic approach. And then it evolved further in 16-17, where it was a relatively sort of quick list of the overall fiscal policy, public service principles, and public improvement principles. For 18-19, we had our sort of overall budget principles that were kind of the relatively consistent principles about in those sort of three key issue areas: the public service, fiscal, and infrastructure. And then we identified some key work plan items. One was options for the council to consider to address rising CalPERS costs, complete our cannabis regulatory framework, implement a new neighborhood watch program, work towards the Coastal Commission certification of our zoning code, and continuing to work with the mall ownership group on redevelopment. We also identified a number of capital improvement priorities, which was beginning construction on the library, building the jetty and flume projects, and then completing the design for the wharf. And then other capital projects included the Rispin Park, Bromer, Park Avenue, and Slurry Seal project. So that's what we did in 1819. So for tonight, one of the things I'm asking the council is to take a look at these fiscal policies, these sort of broad fiscal policies, which have been relatively consistent year to year, and they include maintaining a balanced budget to ensure that we meet ongoing expenditures, ongoing revenues and ongoing expenditures are matching, make sure we're using one-time revenue for one-time expenditures, and ensure the budget plans for the cost increases as we look out into the future. We've identified pretty consistent public service principles that we've used in the past, which is maintain and improve upon the transparency of city operations and accessibility to the government, recognize the high priority that this community places on public safety, and analyze future service level increases for their long-term fiscal impact to ensure stability. And then for our public improvement principles has been focused on pavement management, maintaining and improving our natural resources and sustainable green programs, and then maintaining the cleanliness of our city facilities, streets, and sidewalks. So those have kind of been the broad policies, and that'll be one of the things we'll ask the council tonight is, are those still where we want to be, or are there changes that we'd like to do to that? And then I'd like us to also take a little bit of time to focus on the key projects, and I think I've already talked about kind of why they're important, but I think, so interestingly, 10 years ago, the city used to not do the overall budget priorities, but really did kind of annual key projects. And that was sort of the city's goal setting session. It was identifying what are the 5 key projects we're going to do this year. When I came on as manager, I tried to take it as a higher level and try to identify our key, overall strategic goals. I think that there could be some value, though, in having the council take a moment to maybe all the council members identify what they would like to see happen, the key big things, and then have a vote and have the council try to establish, 5 or 6 key projects that then we could incorporate into the budget and ensure that we have the work plan and the resources associated with it. So that's one thing I'd like to give it a shot. And these are just some ideas. They're not necessarily all of them. They're not necessarily the council's, but we listed out a number of things that we think we could consider as key projects. One is the CalPERS issue. 2 is continuing to work with Coastal Commission on the zoning code certification. The mall redevelopment remains a project. Finishing the library and finishing the wharf design. Complete our rec strategic plan, which is a new project that came out of our last meeting potentially. The review and evaluation of our community grant program. We're also going to be implementing the cannabis regulatory structure and developing that regulatory structure, audit, and inspection plan. These are just ideas, and I think the council members may have their own. So that's what we're seeking direction on this evening is I guess number one is the format. We've used a number of different formats, and I think our preference may be to kind of go back to that original format and really tie kind of our high-level policies and principles, and then into the key projects, and then into the specific budget metrics. I think it gives something more tangible to evaluate our performance against, and then confirm our high-level budget principles, and then identify 5 to 6 projects. And at this point, we have about 15 more minutes before we'll be recessing this meeting for our special meeting, and I'm available for questions.
Questions of the city manager. Sam?
Yvette, do you want to go?
I just need a clarifying question before we move forward. Is when we jump into this, is that to assume that the projects from 1819 that were incomplete or halfway complete, that we're not moving forward with those? Because I'd like to see a list of where we're at, so then we're not being redundant in our efforts.
That's a good question. So often with this is we will do a little bit of a, why am I not finding it here?
Repeat, please.
Was it? This is. We've often done a little bit of a written summary of how we've done against these work plan items and what the status of these are. verbally I can say the CalPERS issue is not solved. It won't be solved in any given year. It's going to be an ongoing effort. The cannabis regulatory framework we've done that, and it's been implemented, and it's now out, and we're getting applications. I think they're due by the end of this month for the retail licenses. The new Neighborhood Watch program, I believe, is up and running. The Coastal Commission certification process is long and winding, and Katie's made some great progress on it, and I think we'll be seeing something in front of the council, but I don't think it's going to be done. I think we're going to be essentially proposing kind of a piecemeal approach and getting the easy stuff done. There will still continue to be some hard things to work out with them. And then the mall redevelopment continues to be a pending project. I hope it starts before the end of this fiscal year, but that's kind of a quick status update on these, and I think they do deserve a more in-depth review, and they will, in the budget, certainly get that more sort of full explanation of where they are at the close of the fiscal year.
And if I may, is this the entire list that previous council
So
adopted?
this was the entire list, and then in addition, they were broken into public service and fiscal, and then capital improvement priorities, and so this was the capital improvement priorities, and I can talk about where these each stand if you would like a quick update.
Well, again, to go back to my original question, is out of the 3 areas of all 1819 adopted items, which ones were completed and which ones weren't, and so then we can maybe have a better discussion, so we're not so redundant, or I'm not bringing
Right.
up mall and we're in the middle of it or something like that. I just for
You're trying to get some continuity from before.
right
to the
before
present.
you're right, because we don't have this we have some of that, but
Yeah,
what has been done.
we can certainly do that if that would be helpful, is go through these and provide kind of more in either a matrix or table format, kind of where the status of these projects are. I can't do that. I can do it verbally right now, but I can't do the matrix for a future
What's
meeting.
our timeline on this at this point?
So we're heading into budget. Why don't I get the finance director up here with me? We're heading into budget development. This isn't a gotta do tonight. We certainly could continue this item for another couple weeks. We're going to be into heavy budget development here in the next.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We'll be kicking off, this is kind of the kickoff to the budget process right now. I'll send out kind of the worksheets where all the department heads and staff will start putting together numbers, but this will be a kind of evolving process with the goals and the priorities as we're going through. What we're kind of looking for tonight is just kind of that baseline so we can get started. As we start looking at how we can allocate resources, we want to make sure we're directing those towards council priorities as much as possible.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It would be hard to set a priority that might be really expensive to complete if we have 5 other projects going on that would, what would be feasible and what wouldn't. I'm struggling with a little bit of that.
If I may, would it help at all to suggest that any of the priorities from last year that haven't been met continue to stay on our priority list? Would that
Yeah,
help?
that's
Would
what I
that
know. Yeah,
suit the
incomplete.
purposes that you're?
Yeah,
I think that's
incomplete.
what the
Does
one
that make
slide had, didn't it? Didn't the one slide have pretty much of a carryover of?
It did.
So then moving forward, we're looking to identify 5 to 6 additional
To this list?
in addition to the things that are continuing from last year, correct?
I think it's council discretion on this one. These, I put together, this is more than 5 or 7. I'm not sure how many that is, if that's.
Yeah, that's not 18.
Is this the list you were hoping to whittle down to 5 or 6?
This is just sort of a list to start the conversation.
For this year?
For this year.
Right, but I think if I'm understanding correctly, the question is the
What happens
list
to
that we
ones-
had, the ones from last year, are we carrying them over?
The first 3 on that list are from last year.
Right.
Oh, okay, so then everything else we're kind of figured, we're done, we did it.
Yeah, and in fact, the first 4, because the library and wharf projects also showed up on last year's, on last year's project as well, on last year's project list as well.
So if I'm hearing that correctly, the 1819 items that have not been completed are the first 4 items here today being presented? You look a little hesitant, Jamie.
Well, I want to make sure that if I say yes, that's exactly the case. The Bromer Street project is ready for. Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
Bromer Street isn't done today. I'm not sure if it's going to be done before the close of the fiscal year or not. help me out, Steve.
I'll just run through them. So you know the library project, the jetty and the flume, the last meeting.
Postponed it.
Yeah, we postponed that. We're getting ready to come back with some ideas on the design on the wharf shortly to the council. We'll be able to move that one forward. Rispin Park kind of got put on the back shelf as we were working on the library project because there was some potential to impact the Rispin property with the library project at one point. So we are now going through, and there were some drainage issues and grade problems that we discovered when we put the ADA pathway in there as part of another project. So we're finalizing that and hope to get that wrapped up here in the next month or so. As far as the street project, Bremer Street, we're holding the community meeting. We probably have a design at 50% right now. Park Avenue, which is a sidewalk project, we actually hope to go to bid in a month on and get that built, and the Surrey seal is completed.
In the Rispin, is there a potential to be some work done on that this year? Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
May I add something? So everything on that list except one is incomplete at this point.
Yes. Well, we began construction, but on the
Right,
library.
right.
But,
So would it be important to ensure that we state today that we add these to continue on? So I'm just trying, just for clarity, that we would have to state today that these projects need to be on our 1920 priorities list in order for them to continue.
Mr. Mayor, Councilwoman Brooks. So what I'm hoping to get away from is, I mean, if we budget a CIP project, our assumption as staff is it's important to get it done. And what I'm hoping for is that when we talk about kind of the strategic goals of the city, kind of the really high level projects, that it's maybe bigger than one individual CIP project. I mean, in the case of the library, you know, since it was the largest project we've done in a long time, it could have stood alone, I think. But I felt like at some point, as a high level priority for this point in the budget process, that some of these things got a little bit further into the weeds than we needed to. Does that help at all?
What about a bullet point just saying that one of our priorities for this year is to continue to prioritize our priorities from last year?
Or complete our funded CIP projects.
Yeah? Does that work?
Well, I guess my understanding is that the Bremer Street project is a funded capital project. So the money's sitting in the budget. We're not going to be wrangling with how to fund that project. And so for budgetary purposes, to me, it's an accomplished budget item. We don't need to focus on it. Of course, there's management in following it through, and we want to see that done. I assume that's the same for the Park Avenue project. It's a funded project. Slurry seal has been done. So to me, the questions are, what are the critical projects that are not funded and that maybe we want to try to put some focus on and see if we can get some agreement that for budgetary purposes, we would be looking at those items, i.e. Clare Street. Not that I'm trying to put out one of my priorities, but
Go ahead.
it's an unfunded item. So as an example, I would think that would be added to the priorities list for budgetary purposes. And so that's kind of the way I look at it. And so,
May I?
Yes.
I would hope that
Ed next.
that was the case. Sorry, Ed.
Oh, go ahead.
I would hope that's the case, that in fact that all of these have been budgeted and that they will be completed, so that when we add additional things, for example, like Claire's, to the list, that we won't run into any issues with budget constraints. So that's just my concern. So is that true that all of these items have been budgeted and in fact have?
Councilwoman Brooks, yes, that's a simple answer. I mean, you know, I think there are scenarios where we would end up with such a big CIP that we would have to start really looking at, okay, which are the ones that actually can move forward and which are the ones that can't. We're not going to have that big of a CIP next year. That I think that we really need to get in a position of saying, you know, look, which are the 10 most important that we're going to be adding this year.
Thank you.
Yeah, you know, I think we're at a crossroads, and I appreciate where the city manager is trying to lead us. I think philosophically the city manager wants us to go down a path of seeking the higher level, maybe because ultimately he knows that there's not a lot of money to do like Sammy mentioned, the projects that need to get done. But where I think Councilmember Brooks is falling back on, and I'm a little biting into this a little also, is we've got a lot of projects, and there's a key word, and it's not anybody's fault, but there's a word called delay, okay? And we could actually say that the RISPN's been delayed for 28 years, okay? And I know that, Sam, I think you were actually here the last time we funded the last amount of money to make sure that the RISPN would be finally built. And, you know, and I think Councilman Brooks wants to, she'd like to scratch things off on the top knowing that they're done so we can just keep moving down the list, whereas the city manager wants to broaden our outlook. And I'm with Councilmember Brooks. I just like to scratch a couple boxes, okay, knowing that they're done, okay. Now, Park Avenue is, Steve, not you, we're Steve. No, been a long project. It's going to be a final conclusion to have sidewalks on Park Avenue. I can't remember the famous council or a council attendee that lived, the woman that lived on where the street was. She came to all the meetings, complained that she was going to die before there were sidewalks on Park Avenue.
Oh, God, don't
Sandy,
bring her,
there we
don't bring
go.
her
Thank you. Okay, and we still don't have sidewalks on Park Avenue, so she was a prophet. Okay, but so
She moved.
yeah, I know she moved. She finally did. She gave up. She moved to Texas.
She didn't want to die.
But the thing is, we still don't have sidewalks on Park Avenue, so she was kind of right. So I'd like to get those out. And then for me, I'm a little bit with Sam. I mean, there's a couple projects that I realize that our focus is still the library. And that's a great project, and I think it's all paid for. But I'm also believing that because of things that happened, there might be some residual funds left over that may actually allow us to do some projects that were never completed, okay? Because the one thing we did when we went all in Texas Hold'em for the library, we didn't do any other projects in this town for a long time. And so I think we might, when you bring up to us, and specifically me, that you want council members to suggest their project, we might all have one pet project that we'd like to throw out there. And it may be a tangible project, not necessarily this philosophical list that, you know, oh, here we go. I've been saying, maybe you're anticipating, but I appreciate the philosophy of wanting us to really develop the cannabis project and to get them all on board, and those are priorities. But I would love to be able to address Councilmember Brooks's concern about, well, what have we actually completed and when does it go away? So.
And I will note that we have 1 minute till this special meeting needs to begin.
Any other comments? I've become aware
I think
that.
we have any members of the public here that are here to speak, so.
Okay, I just want to make one last comment. I've become well aware since I've been in this position how long projects take, and a lot of it's depending on funding and grants that we get, working with neighbors and defining plans like Park Avenue. When I ran for city council the first time, that was a big issue, and now we're finally getting to full funding, and neighbors are all agreed on, and the plans are hopefully well. And Claire's that you brought up, I mean, that goes back to RDA. So I think it's 8:30, and let's move to our special meeting here. Do we need to adjourn? Is this the way we do it?
I think we wouldn't adjourn, we would recess.
Okay, I'd like to recess this regular city council meeting and come back to order to 8:30 meeting for a special meeting. And we are all present. All materials have been received. This is to deal with government, a budget amendment to fund emergency tree removal of City Hall. Is there a report, Steve?
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. Item before you tonight at the special meeting is to consider a emergency tree removal project at City Hall. Public Works staff had asked arborist James Allen, who's worked for the city for over the past decade, to inspect 13 trees, predominantly between the City Hall building and the upper parking lot, and one other tree that was located between the two, the upper and the lower parking lot. He evaluated these trees for health, stability, and potential impacts if failure occurs. Of the 13, 6 trees were found to be relatively healthy, 3 rated a 6, and I'm going to explain the ratings to you in a minute. 1 was rated an 8, 2 was 9, but 7 of the trees were found to be high-risk trees, 4 were rated at an 11, and 3 were out of 10, and all those ratings are out of 12. So A rating of 6 means the tree has no anticipated problems for the next 10 years, and there's 3 of those. An 8 is no anticipated problems for 1 to 5 years. There's 1 of those. The 9 is trees has issues but not likely to fall apart right away. Eventual removal is likely for those. Those are 2. And then 10 and 11 become the probability of failure is significant and is getting serious, and mitigation measures should be scheduled and implemented soon or now. And 11 is a tree has reached a stage where it could fail at any time, and action is required within weeks. So that's why we're here tonight. Is we have certain amount of 11s that exist immediately behind us here at City Hall, and 1 between the parking lot, and a couple 10s too that we. It's a good time to take care of them. So I've just prepared this map. To identify the trees here. Obviously, here's City Hall over to the left, Police Department. This is the upper parking lot. So you can see we have just immediately behind the City Hall building, we have an oak tree, 2 oak trees, and the other one's located between the parking lot that are both 11s. They have significant rot within their trunks, and they could fail immediately. We've actually closed off the parking down here below this oak tree on the lower lot. So that it doesn't fall on any cars. After the oak trees, we have a series of eucalyptus trees. There's 5 of them that we're recommending be removed. 3 of them are immediately behind City Hall, all of them rated 10s or 11s. And then we have 2 up near the rail corridor, and the both of those rated 10s or 11s, and 1 of them is located in the railroad right away. I think we may have thought there was 2, but we've measured it, and this one is outside the rail corridor. And the Regional Transportation Commission has agreed to help pay for that one. We've kind of talked to them about a $4,000 price tag. If that, as we get final bids, I'm sure we'll go for whatever that tree goes for. We're getting a lump sum bid, so it's kind of all the trees equal. This tree's actually not that difficult to remove. It's tall, just like all the other eucalyptus, but they're going to be able to sit on a crane right here and just pick it apart. So the recommendations tonight are to authorize the city manager to contract for the immediate removal of the 7 trees that have a risk assessment rating of 10 or higher at a cost not to exceed $33,000. And approve a budget transfer of $33,000 from the facility fund appropriation for City Hall improvements to the tree service contract allocation within the Parks Department.
Any questions of Steve? Kristen has a question.
The inspection by the arborist, did that take place before the tree that's already fallen fell?
Yes, it was something we looked at. We initiated it about before the winter, but we had to clear some ivy and do some stuff so he could see it. So we initiated it probably back in November, and he was just able to complete it in the last end of February. And he hadn't looked at the tree that recently failed since 2017.
Okay.
That was not part of the 13 trees we asked him to look at.
Okay.
But I think coincidentally, they were actually out the next day doing the inspection.
Yeah, it was.
It was initiated months ago, but.
Right.
But the trees that we're looking at are clearly at risk of doing the same thing.
Yes.
Okay. Open for discussion clearly, but I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that we approve staff recommendation.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Ed?
Our ability to get a better price for the tree removal, is it somewhere contingent upon how many trees are out there? I mean, is it obviously removing 7 is we're getting a better price than removing 2?
Yeah, I think.
Is there some benefit to them being on site? That's what I'm trying to get here.
Yes, obviously there's mobilization costs. The more we remove, the cheaper per tree we would pay.
Right.
Yes.
And since there's already been a motion, I'm just going to want to add to this. I have some concerns about also including the 2 number 9 trees. I don't see if we're going to come out here and do 10s and 11s, and we've got other trees that are eminent within, whatever the terminology you had for a number 9. It's 2 additional trees.
Yeah, I was actually looking at the 9s. Actually, one of them's an oak tree located above. It's not that big of an oak tree. I think we can actually do some trimming and nurse that one along if you'd want. The other is a eucalyptus tree, and I would fully support removing any eucalyptus tree.
I would like to make a friendly amendment to include the number 9s.
The second accepts that.
Okay. Okay, Sam, is there a comment?
I was just going to maybe to ask for public comment, so.
Yes, this last question. No more questions? Okay, is there any public comment? Seeing none, back to the city council for motion. We already have a motion.
We have a motion.
Person has a
I would
motion.
just like to add, maybe we also direct staff to move as expeditiously as possible
No.
to make this happen.
I believe we hope to have a contractor on site Monday.
Okay, great.
Great, thank you.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so pass.
Thank you.
Move back to regular meeting.
All right, so we got one of our key goals done.
Yep, okay. So we're
the
still
manager
on
alive.
budget principles.
So, I think Councilmember Botdorf left this off, I mean, pretty succinctly summarizing where we are. You know, there's a question between any guidance that the council can give, either as a body or as individuals at this stage, is going to be helpful for staff as we start developing the budget. Whether we can do it this evening or whether we want to continue it for another 2 weeks, that's certainly the council's option. We did sort of set this up potentially for each council member to list out what they would like to see as kind of key budget items, and then hopefully have the council as a whole come up with, winnow the list down and come up with their priorities.
Yes, Ed.
I'll start. And I go back to that list that you had, with your optimistic list, not specifically this one, the one that had the items. Some that were carryover that you mentioned.
These.
Yeah, I support everyone that's on there and moving forward with each one of those. I think some of them are wrapping up as we speak. And specifically for me, I'm just going to make my pitch for since if you want to go to the other chart for my name. We had a presentation earlier from the Art Commission, and there's a project that, for lack of a better terms, I like to call it the Lipstick on a Pig project, is the art wall that's in front of the Bella Roba restaurant. And I think we've made a lot of effort to improve all of our access from the beach parking lots into the village, and that one section of sidewalk, I think, is still a hazard. We never dealt with it. We had a temporary fence there. We put up that absolutely gorgeous fence that we did, but we never put in the wall and the sidewalks and completed that project. And we realized there were no funds available for that project because we diverted everything into the library. I want to guess that it's probably a $150,000 project to dig that out, put in the retaining wall, replace the sidewalk, and then reinstall the art wall back on top of that. And that would complete both sides of the street access from the beach parking lots into the village. And I believe that side of the street is a heavily trafficked street, and that project is long overdue. So that's my pitch.
Okay. You done?
We're going down the list here. So I want to make sure that we complete all CIP 1819 projects. Coming in, and when I've brought up the Clare Street renovations or sidewalk fixes or crosswalks that are blinking, I've always been told that there's no money to complete that. So again, I'm hesitant to even add things like that because I don't want to put things on there that are not even feasible. So I really want us to be able to circle back to that and have a real conversation of what's possible in the future. So if this is my wish list, then I would say absolutely add Clare Street to, and more specifically, right by the library. I'd love to see crosswalks there, and I'd like to see one of those flashing pedestrian lights where we see one right by New Brighton Middle School where it says, slow down. I don't know the real terminology for that, but that's what I'd specifically like to see on that side of Claire's. And then on the opposite side where the mall is crossing towards Trader Joe's, there's no crosswalks there either. So that's that. If I were to divide, so we have fiscal, public service, and public improvement. For the fiscal, I just want to be sure that we note that the 1920 youth programs out of our community grants, that those are paid by the Dedicated Children's Fund. And I know we decided that at the last meeting, but I just want to make sure I highlight that all youth programming is paid out of the Dedicated Children's Fund. And that the general fund dollars that are opened up possibly go towards the remodel of our community center. So I believe that's about a $28,000 general fund left over that we would have. So I'd love to see our community center get a facelift. So that's that fiscal piece of it. Public service, I would agree with the previous list to complete that Park and Rec strategic plan. I know that the Art and Cultural Committee noted this, but to really have them focus on the 41st Avenue corridor, especially as we wait for the mall renovation, as there's a lot going on, it might not look so pretty. We could focus on that.
This one. Yeah, I just missed one, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Was it?
Parks and Rec, Arts and Cultural Committee focusing, I know it's in their goals, but to focus on the 41st Avenue corridor. And then the suggestions previously noted, so like completing the wharf, completing the mall, looking at the applicants for the two, whatever you want to call that previous list. Yeah, the ID projects, I would agree on. Thank you. That's all.
All right. I would also suggest the completion of the 18-19 CIP projects. I think that's a given. Clare Street, I also think is important. I know that we had some concerns about applying for grants for it in this fiscal year, but I think it's something that we need to keep on our radar moving forward because the condition of that street is just so poor. And really street improvement in general. I know that we're continuing a slurry seal project throughout the city, correct? And I just want to make sure that that stays on our radar as well. Let's see, what else? Oh, the wharf. I'm interested in pursuing any potential grants that may be available for the remodel of the wharf and any kind of additional bells and whistles that we may be able to throw in there as we remodel if we can find grant funding for it. And having worked in the village for a while now, I get a lot of comments about our parking technology infrastructure, I suppose I would call it, for lack of a better phrase. And so I don't know if that's a matter of needing to budget for it or just consider addressing it at some point or consider discussing it at some point, but it's something that I would like to add to the list. That's all for me.
Okay. Sam?
Okay. Thank you. Before I begin with my particular capital projects
Jamie,
list.
You have some comments?
I just want to make sure that as council members, when they're finished, that they see what I put up on the
okay.
board, and make sure I got it right. So now.
Yeah. Okay.
May I ask a follow-up question? On the two things that I recommended staff to bring forward earlier today, would you consider those to be listed as the priorities, or is that something that?
I think on the tobacco item, I think we should bring it forward to hearing. We'll do that in the next, several meetings here this spring, and we'll see if it develops into a larger project or if it's, I mean, I don't know that adopting adopting an ordinance necessarily falls into a sort of a overall strategic.
And then the second part to that, would you consider that a priority, the comps?
I don't think that's.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Sam?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I guess I wanted to start with the public service principles, and I guess I just had a question about the second bulleted item. It says recognize the high priority the community places on public safety. That's all true. I agree with that. But I was wondering, what's the definition of public safety? Are we just talking about law enforcement, or is there a broader concept of what public safety may entail?
My recollection is these words were chosen relatively deliberately when the first time they were introduced, because it was, rather than it was just saying the police department, it was intended to mean public safety in general. So it was intended to be focused certainly on the police department, but also focusing on the overall public safety of our community. So I that's my recollection. I don't remember how it came about exactly, but it's been a carry forward for many, many years.
Right, and I think if that is an understanding, among the council members that it has a broader interpretation. I'm fine with that. My preference would maybe say health and safety, public health and safety. I mean, we just dealt with an item concerning trees, to me, which was a public safety issue, okay? And it's not.
Public, maybe the word publics.
Yeah,
Instead of
the
public.
public
because
safety.
Public safety has a connotation for police and fire.
Right.
And if it was public's safety, then.
Yeah,
then-
that's a good suggestion, Ed, and I would encourage us to maybe, use that term to recognize that we're not just looking at the concept of enforcement, but in other ways as
The
well.
public,
Because yes,
as-
okay.
As a noun.
So now, with that going on to the list, the carry forward items, I think it is critical to continue to work on those items that we've already started and have budgeted and move along with them. I would also I imagine there's some maybe other items on our CIP list that are unfunded, and that we should, since those have, by previous councils, have been added to the CIP list, maybe we should, during the budget time, review those as well, see if there's anything that we need to bring our attention back to. In terms of other particular projects, I'm Rispin Park now. I'm happy to be able to call it a park. Just in terms of longevity, I think that needs to have one of the highest priorities, and hopefully moving along in tandem with the library completion, and having both of those maybe within a short period of time be completed and available to the community would be a wonderful accomplishment. I agree with the other council members' comments about Claire's. I would also, in terms of streets, I would like to make a pitch once again for Fanmar. That has been in terrible shape for decades, and because it is a bigger project, it's been harder to tackle. Concerning the sidewalk on Capitol Avenue, I think, Ed, you make a very good point. But I think that there needs to be some attention to that sidewalk from the parking lots where the public parks, the visitors come, and then they all walk down that sidewalk to get to the village, to get to the beach. Families, mothers in strollers. That sidewalk is not wide enough. On the other side, it had been widened, but many people are on this side of the sidewalk. It's a narrow sidewalk all the way from City Hall here, all the way from the parking lots to the destination at the village. I think that needs to be included as part of what we did, and Ed, that you were part of in the widening the sidewalk in the village throughout. But I just see, people stepping out into the streets even when they're passing one another. So I would like to maybe have that be considered on the list. And if we can do all those things, or at least get some start on them, I'd be happy. Thank you.
Any other comments? You've heard everyone speak, so I'll make a few comments. I like the principles. I think that they're well crafted, so I'd like to give support to that. And I'm with Yvette to call out the things that we have designated in the past and make sure they're complete and maybe revisit them so we're up to date on what the situation is. And I have a few that I'd like to add. I did bring up earlier about the skate park mural, and I've mentioned this multiple times. We have a beautiful mural out there, but it's largely obscured, depending on where you are, by the porta potties. And I think that we should invest in moving the porta potties to a different location in the parking area that is easily accomplished and makes the murals completely visible to the public. And perhaps add some park benches there so people could use that area to congregate. I did bring up the idea of starting the process to create a McCormick Triangle Park. I'd like to mention that over the last couple of years, the neighbors in that area have participated in multiple cleanup projects to pull out the ivy, and thanks to Steve and his department to pulling out all the refuge that we've accumulated, and we've continued to do that. And now with Steve's help, we also have a park bench there, and we'd like to move forward with the idea of a park there. I do support the idea of working on Clare Street. I call it Clare's Light because I don't think we could do everything that we had originally planned when the RDA was there. I think of great help would be to put pedestrian crossings. There aren't any pedestrian crossings right now. I don't know what the appropriate streets would be. I understand we'd probably lose some parking, but I think in terms of slowing down traffic and making it easier for people to go back and forth, there are people that live on the library side and they don't have an appropriate crossing to get to the other side. I received a number of emails about the dangerous pedestrian crossing at Bay and Hill. I'd like to see a flashing light there so that people could make the cars know that they're trying to cross. I'd like to note that we do have some senior housing nearby, and it's particularly arduous for those members of that complex to get across the street. I'd like to have the city manager on an annual basis give a state of the city talk. I'd like for him to carry that out in whatever way that he feels fit, but I think the city of Capitola should get a statement about how we're doing in terms of our budget, how we're going ahead on our projects, the things that we've promised to the city of Capitola. We've passed a number of funding mechanisms, TOT, sales tax increase and stuff like that. So I'd like to see the city manager give a statement on an annual basis so that the residents of Capitola know where we're at. The thing that I'm particularly interested in is working with the county economic development department to address some of the economic development needs that I feel we have for small businesses in Capitola. As you know, we've had, and over the years, we've had multiple vacancies in the village and other parts of the city. And as opposed to the city of Santa Cruz, we don't have the budget to have an economic development department like they do. We also share this with Scotts Valley and to some extent with Watsonville. So I've reached out to all two of those mayors. And also I've brought this up at the mayor's conference, the meeting that we have. And I think there could be a lot of benefit in us working together with the county of Santa Cruz and the economic development department that the county has. I've also talked to Zach Friend. He hasn't endorsed anything, but he thinks it's possible. So those are my particular items.
Mr. Mayor, I was just...
Yes, sorry.
I wanted to ask a clarification on one of the items that, Yvette, that you mentioned. You said you'd like to see all youth programming paid from the new dedicated TOT funding. Mm-hmm. I was just does the meaning of that is that any youth program now would have to fit into that funding pocket? And not be, and none of the community programs funding be available for youth programming?
I'm not sure.
So you're not precluding
right.
that could
right.
possibly be done? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I mean, there may not be enough of TOT funding to do all the things that we want to do, and
sure.
having the ability to maybe look at community programs for other youth funding that we support would be, I think, give us more flexibility. But I just wanted to try to get a clarification of what your intention was with that.
Yeah, There is a list, a current youth programs list that have been pulled out, and those were the ones I was specifically speaking about. But I'm not sure. I know that the Dedicated Children's Fund is very specific in early ed and youth programs, and but however further defined, I think that could be up for conversation later.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'd just like to jump in. I think Yvette said it fairly well. This is going to be up for conversation. You know, it's been a joint effort, started initially by Kristen and Ed, and it recognizes that the choice of how we expend our funds on special projects that benefit the community at large is something of contention. So I really appreciate that we're going out about this in a more rigorous and logical fashion. So, Ed.
I just have a little comment I want to add. Just for a general guideline, I know that there's a lot of concerns, and we get different input from citizens about people in certain neighborhoods want their street repaired. And I just put in on my fiscal responsibility hat, you know, we do get a allocation, and I'm gonna wing it here, Steve, somewhere between $300,000 and $400,000 annually for Measure D, right? Okay. And I just want us to try, I mean, we that is a significant improvement for us. We were a city that was only allocating maybe $100,000 a year for street improvements. So even though it's definitely not enough to bring up our pavement index program to where we want, it's better than nothing. And I just want us to try to make an effort to use Measure D money for streets and roads and not use general fund money for streets and roads. I understand we have a big need for something like a Claire's project, but keep in mind that is like $1.5 million project, and it may take us a while, like we did for Monterey and Park, to finally get those paved and get there. But I think as a general guideline for the council, we should always try to use that. It's going to be about $12 million worth of money over the next few years for streets and roads, and try to get the other projects done with general fund money, just as a guideline.
Thank you. So I think we've given you some ideas, and at this point, do people want to vote on them or sort of mull them over and come back next council session? I think it's already been told to us this is a guideline, and we're not in a rush to do it right away, but Jim would like to get a sense of where we're at. So what would the city council members like to do?
What was the city manager's hope? Were you trying to get us to vote on?
My hope would be to have the council sort of, having heard everybody's, try to come to some consensus on a list. I mean, I think there's more here than can be done in a year.
No.
Come on. So, you know, if the council could go through this and say, look, you know, understanding these, and whether we do it tonight or whether we do more research, come back in 2 weeks, but identify 6 of these, 8 of these that are the key ones that we need to focus on. Not to say that none of the other things would happen, but, you know, identifying which ones are the most important ones. It sounds like I see a lot of consensus around completing the stuff from the previous years, consensus around some option on Clare Street, and we need to obviously develop that further. And I see streets show up in a number of different people's. But yes, I think seeing the council endorse a list of a subset of this would certainly be helpful.
Okay, Yvette?
Yeah, if I could make a suggestion, I don't feel comfortable voting people off the island on things that I don't know where we stand fiscally on. I would love for staff to come back to us to say, you know, we can accomplish Clare Street with some sidewalk or crosswalk, you know, with a little bit more guidance on what we have up there, or if in fact we've started on some of these things that we may not be aware of, or, you know, there might not be any fiscal things like to move porta potties, you know, is that, I don't want to say no to that, but it's a possibility to be done. You know, so I just like to get some feedback before saying, these are my 5. I just don't feel comfortable picking 5 or 6 tonight.
Kristen has a comment too.
Yeah, just actually, you know, I agree with what Councilwoman Brooks is saying, and what I'm seeing here is there's a lot that we are agreeing on, as you mentioned, that are overarching kind of streets and sidewalks is a topic, and then under that we have, okay, Clare Street, Fanmar Street, and then we have things like parks and the Rispin Park so I'm wondering if it would be worth it to come back to this in 2 weeks, and in the meantime take a look at this and see what are the, as mentioned at the beginning, broader goals, and then within those broader goals have these kind of smaller bullet points underneath them, rather than saying I want to say that Clare Street needs to be one of our priorities. Why wouldn't we say I want our streets and sidewalks to be our priorities, to include Clare Street, Fanmar, et cetera, would that be appropriate to essentially keep a lot of these, but keep them as kind of bullet points under a broader category?
I think that's certainly possible. How about we try bringing it back in 2 weeks, have staff do a little bit of organization work underneath the overall principles and kind of slot some of these things in underneath.
Associate a price tag with them also.
Yeah, and try to identify at least a ballpark price tag. Or in some cases, it may be less of a price tag and more of a staff time. Because, there's only so much, we have a relatively focused staff, and so there's only so much bandwidth. And so try to bring back a little bit more information and let us take another look at it. Frankly, I think around the CIP projects, that is Claire's or a larger Capitola Road Ave project, sidewalk project, or just at Bellaroma, I think that's going to get really hammered out during the budget when we see how much money we have. So, maybe we take those projects and kind of put them aside for the time being rather than worrying too much about it, and we ID what the projects might look like, and then when we get into the budget, we actually have a clearer picture of how much money we have, and then it becomes time to vote on it, and we put our attention in 2 weeks more on the sort of staff-intensive workload items. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So I think
I'll see that in
going
2
with
weeks.
Kristen's idea, and you seem to find that as a good suggestion, so we'll do that. Okay. No need to vote. Let's move on to Capitola Branch Library Project.
So real quick update on the library construction project. This is part of our reporting that we agreed to as part of the change order policy, that we would report to the council every $100,000 that we add to the project or every 2 months. So this is a 2-month project because we haven't added anything to the project yet. So quick, a construction update, rain, and more rain. Basically rain the month of February. We lost 29 days. That's when it actually rained. Those lead to more delays because you got to dry out the soil, and you can't just go to work as soon as it stops raining. So that's the big thing. I figured out the best way to beat a drought is to start a $12 million construction project. Contractor's done an excellent job of protecting the site through the rains. We haven't had any erosion problems. They've done an excellent job of securing the site so that when they do get clear weather, they were able to get some work done. They've completed some of the rough grading for the foundations and potholing around the site for utilities and conflicts. In the coming month, we hope to start pouring the foundation. Actually, I think the first pour is scheduled for next week, and construct the water main extension that goes through the property and install on-site drainage, which actually help them. I realize we're probably through most of the winter now, but we'll help them address drainage on the project, and they also have quite a bit of underground utility work to do, such as running gas lines and electrical lines onto the site. Cost update, the present construction value of the contract is $11,588,000. This value is about $55,000 short of the value engineering goal that the council gave us. But we do have a $77,000 value engineering change order in the process, so it looks like we'll be able to beat our goals. As I said earlier, there's been no additive change orders issued to date. On the expense side, we've paid the contractor $492,595, which is 4.3% of the project. Due to the range, the schedule has been pushed back at this point approximately 1 month. We anticipate completion a year from now in March of 2020. And the current contingency balance, kind of a good thing to keep track of, is $650,000.
Where did that start at, Steve? Contingency balance?
It's been all over. I think we originally started around 800, and then it's gone down to much lower than that. And right now we're at 650. I anticipate it actually going up at the next meeting because we're actually going to, the budget for the furniture, fixtures, and equipment's coming in under what we have budgeted for there, and that will add probably close to $100,000 in addition to that contingency.
And Steve, will the VE, the next change order, add to the contingency, or are you already taking that into account?
We've taken that into account, yep. So just to complete the report, budget for the project is a little over $15 million. It comes from various funds. The details are in the agenda packet, but we've received $6.6 million. And of that, we have a total expense on the project to date of $1.8 million. So that includes all the design costs and special studies we had to do and related expenses just to getting to the construction part. So we have a $4.8 million cash balance right now, and the city finance director has invested that in various funds, and those details are again in the agenda report. So I just thought I'd run you through a couple pictures. The last time we were here was January 10th. That was what the project looked like, covered in plastic, trying to avoid the rain. That's what it looks like today. You can see we have quite a bit of form work for the foundation pour. We anticipate this left side to be poured next week. This is under the children's room. We're actually doing some test pours here. The architect wants to try some colored concrete for the main wall that will go along Wharf Road. So we're going to do those test pours and see how those turn out. And then, let's see. So at this point, there's no action required. I'm happy to answer questions, but I did want to see if we could make this work since we're paying for this camera. So the time-lapse camera kind of showing. So this is approximately January 10th when we were there. And through the days, every time you see plastic covering it, and that's it. More rain, more rain, more rain, lots of rain. So this is what we've done in the last 2 months.
The baseball game with the rain delays.
Yeah. So there you go. That's what we've done in the last 2 months, is play with plastic. So anyway, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions? Sam?
Actually, I don't have a question. Thank you, Steve, for that report and showing us the progress of the project. I guess I wanted to make a plug for the Capitola. You know, there's a capital campaign project that's gone public now, and part of that is to have community member or anyone buy pavers that will be placed at the library. We're going to be having 310 12 by 12 pavers. They'll cost $325 each. With that, you get 3 lines of text, 16 characters per line, and your family's name or your name will be forever indelibly placed at the new library. So I just wanted to announce that to everyone. If you're interested, you can go online and just do a search on Capitola Branch Library Capital Campaign Paver, or you can contact Tony at Camp Tony, CAMPTONI @cruzio.com. Thank you very much.
So Steve, I had a question. Can you speak to where the committee landed on the universal design concept? I know we had some representatives who attended the committee meeting to talk about ensuring that the library was going to purchase furniture that was more inclusive to those with disabilities.
Right. So many of those items we've discussed. We are definitely moving. A lot of them are on the furniture end that the library system needs to decide on as they go forward. So they're reviewing the actual furniture items. As far as the construction project, we are looking at adding the push-button entry for the front door. The library has expressed concerns about having panic buttons in the restrooms, and so they kind of didn't want to go in that direction.
Yeah.
So those are really the only two items related to construction. The rest were furniture, and the library, I know, is looking at that, and I'll come back to you with more information.
Fantastic, thank you.
I just have one question. I was trying to understand the columns on your spreadsheet. What is the designation escrow? Escrow this period, escrow to date, what is that actually talking about?
I'm trying to find that.
Page
Oh, on
125?
the payment schedule.
Yeah.
Well, can you give me a number so I can?
Well, it seems like it's, just moves along according to where we're at this point.
Oh, so escrow, I understand, I'm sorry. So when we make payments on a public project, they give us a bill for work they've completed to date. We retain 5% of that until the project is complete.
Got it.
To ensure that there's no outstanding bills that need to be paid. On large projects, or actually you can do it on any project, but it's usually on large projects, the contractor can set up an escrow account so that he can earn interest on that money. He's actually earned the money already, but he doesn't get paid. So it's put into an escrow account. And so every payment we make, 5% goes into an escrow account that can't get released until the city approves it.
Got it, thank you. Okay, with that report, I think no more questions. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.